I'm State Representative Rosemary Brown of the 189th District of Monroe and Pike Counties. Welcome to the Legislative Report. I'm joined by Ken THIELE, the Pike County Highway Maintenance Manager. And Ken has really just been doing a great job for us in Pike County with PennDOT. And we have a few things that we're trying to share with the viewers of Pike County and Monroe County, but if you travel through Pike County, on some of the road issues that we're dealing with and some of maybe our wish list as we move ahead. And I think we know we have a big wish list.
Yes, we do.
And I think the constituents have a big wish list as well.
Bigger than ours.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, when you drive the roads, you can pretty much visually see what needs to be done a lot of times. And we know that at the state level, there are funding concerns trying to accumulate money for these projects and for needed projects, especially on the structurally deficient bridges and the roads that we have. We need actually many roads to be rebuilt and drainage, and there's many, many issues. We're looking for at least $2.5 billion a year on transportation funding, and we're still working out those proposals and looking to help fund these projects. So as we move forward with that, I think we'll talk a little bit about the current projects that are in place in Pike County, and then, like I said, our wish list and what we're hearing from constituents on the needs that we have. So give us a little background of your time with PennDOT, now that I know you have a much larger position and responsibility.
I've been with PennDOT for 6 years, a little over 6 years. I came out of Westfall Township. I had been the roadmaster there. My history goes back to probably when I was about 14 years old. I worked for a highway department in the town of Lumberland running a plow truck when I was 14. So I have 46 years experience moving snow. But no, I've been with the state for 6 years. I started out as the assistant county manager, and our manager left 2 years ago. They posted the job, and I acted for a year and finally got the position full-time about a month ago. So I'm very pleased with that. But I thank you for your compliment on the job that I'm doing up there. I don't think there's anybody in PennDOT that doesn't want to do the right thing. We're all dedicated to the job, and we're all trying to do the best with what we have. So, but yeah, there are some issues. I mean, funding certainly is an issue, but that was an inherited issue to the people that are there right now. That's not something that occurred overnight. Most of the roads have aged to the point where the deterioration rate has multiplied. Once they start to deteriorate, there's a multiplier in there that every year they get worse a lot faster. The structurally deficient bridges, which you mentioned, Pennsylvania leads the nation in structurally deficient bridges, but the average age of the bridge in Pennsylvania is 52 years old. Nothing lasts forever. It's no different than buying a car. You can take the best care of that car, you can have the oil changed, you can rotate the tires, you can do whatever you have to do to your car. Eventually it's going to wear out, and that's what's happening to the infrastructure and the roads and bridges in the state of Pennsylvania.
And you almost feel like, Ken, like you said, knowing that we had so many bridges and the road structures and the largest road system in the country,
correct,
that should there have been a plan, because you knew they were all going to hit, you know, maybe 50 years ago or
right,
even 40 years ago and 30 years ago, have a plan of maintenance and repair before it hit.
And again, Rosemary, I think the thing there is too that maybe there was a plan in place at one point in time, but when you get the changeover and the people that are in charge of those plans, you get the different ideas as they come forth. And I know when I talked to my dad, who was a superintendent of highways in Sullivan County, New York, when the road started to go bad, the big thing was, can you patch it and can we get another year out of it? And that's what people were doing. And now we're patching patches because that money never came forth to do the job the correct way. But, I mean, money is something that everybody's looking for. When times are good, you spend money, and when times are lean, you look where you can save the money. And right now we're looking at, we need to spend the money, but we're trying to save money.
And I know you're doing a lot of cost-cutting measures that are not always obvious to the public.
Correct.
And those conversations happen all the time at road task force meetings, at PennDOT winter meetings, and all of our meetings with PennDOT officials. Can you share a couple of those? Because I think people would find that interesting, that conversation is happening.
Yeah, we have to look at what transpired this year, and again, it's of no fault of any one individual, but the income to PennDOT went down $200 million within the last year. That is a factor derived from cars getting better gas mileage. And again, to coattail off of that, the income or the funding for PennDOT is basically liquid fuels money. It's the motor licensing fund. It's driver's license fees, car registration, and there's about a 30 cents a gallon tax on fuel, anybody that buys fuel. The average person is driving about 15,000 miles a year. The average car is getting 22 miles to the gallon. They buy about 680 gallons of gas during the entire year. And of that 680 gallons of gas, we get 30 cents a gallon. It comes out to about $200 a year is all that the motoring public is putting into the infrastructure.
Right.
So the funding of the infrastructure is
Declining.
yeah, it has declined.
And I think most people don't always think of that with the gas tax, that as we improve on the efficiency of the cars, which is a great thing for the constituent on a daily level to have efficiency with their mileage and their gas.
Sure.
You know, you're not filling up as much, but that also hurts on the funding for improvements and projects because that gas tax comes out per gallon.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure you remember a couple years ago the federal government did the cash for clunkers, where they attempted to get the gas guzzlers off the road. That was our income, those gas guzzlers. They
Right.
took them away from us.
Right.
We like those muscle cars at 8
Right.
miles to the gallon.
Right.
But,
Because you get but it's interesting for people who don't know that, to think about that really plays a role. As you're helping one thing, here's the unintended consequence
Absolutely.
of the fact of funding to help do projects and things down the
Yeah,
road.
and I think you ask about what we're cutting. There's projects that we have to look at. I look at the mowing of Interstate 84. Do I need to mow all of Interstate 84 at a certain price, or should I look at just what they refer to as a mohawk cut and just basically cut 12 feet off of each side of the pavement with the mower? Is that as safe as mowing all the medians and everything? It makes the road look nice, but it does nothing to improve the drivability or the smoothness of that road. We're looking at things like that. We have state-of-the-art technology in our trucks as far as spreading salt and anti-skid, and I think we have to look at the levels of service that we provide. It is northeast Pennsylvania. It snows up here. If you're going to live up here in this area, you have to learn to drive in the snow. We don't have a bare road policy. We can't afford to maintain a bare road policy. What I've seen, because I've lived in this area my entire life, I got used to driving on hills, turns, avoiding deer, having turkeys fly in front of the car. That's what living in the country is all about, and you have to learn to adapt to that. If you're not brought up in it, you have to adapt to it. So people that have come up are very unfamiliar with roads that have hills and turns and animals jumping in front of them, and it makes it extremely difficult. But there's nobody to blame for that. That's just the nature, and that is the territory that we live in. I mean, we just had the conversation about roadkill. We don't even want to go there, but we spend a lot of time, we spend money picking up dead deer off the road. Cars hit deer. It's those deer don't belong to PennDOT, but we incur an expense to remove them from the highway. Litter pickup. That's a responsibility of every individual that buys something, is to properly dispose of their litter. The side of the road is not where you want to dispose of it, because you're creating an expense to PennDOT, because we have people that go out and pick litter and then we have to dispose of it. We're buying dumpsters, we're getting rid of it. We do have the Adopt a Highway program, which is a nice idea for volunteers to go out and help us, but our guys go out and pick up the bags that the volunteers have collected. So there's expenses there, and we have to look at things like that we will continue to do, even though there's a funding crunch. But where can we cut back? Last year I did have a couple people that worked for me, because PennDOT runs shifts in the wintertime. We run 24 hours a day, 2 shifts. They're 12-hour shifts. The guys work 7.5 hours out of that shift. We have a shift that starts at 4 in the morning and goes until noon, and then a shift that works from noon until 8. If there's a storm and we need people out at midnight, the crew that starts at 4 in the morning comes in 4 hours early at midnight, and they'll get 4 hours overtime until 4 o'clock. They'll work until noon. The guys will come in at noon, they'll work until 8 o'clock at night. If it's snowing, they'll stay until midnight. So we have that 24-hour coverage in there. When we went on shifts last year, I have bridges with sidewalks that I needed people to shovel the sidewalks and clean those off. I had hired somebody for the wintertime to do that. What I did this year is I have he's called an MR2. He's a maintenance repairman. I'm actually bringing him in out of the field because he works with our bridge crew during the summer. I have him working a shift this winter, so I didn't have to bring back another person for the shift. My stock room, I used to have a second person that I would bring in for the stock room. I have another person who works in my office that he's now going to switch his shift and take a second shift. So I've eliminated bringing back 2 people, which comes at a savings. I had a couple foremans out of my Dingman stockpile. My foremans from the Milford stockpile, there's only 3 people at the Dingman stockpile. They said that they could absorb those 3 people and supervise them on a daily basis. So I did not put 2 acting foremans in to the Dingman stockpile. My acting foremans get a crew cab. We pay for the fuel oil. We pay an out-of-class rate for them to be foremans. We're going to see some sort of savings there. Hopefully we're going to get the same quality of service, and if not, I'll have to revisit that and make my adjustments. That's all.
And I think that that's what, we've seen you do, and we've seen the Pike County District 4 PennDOT, like, really look and say, hey, what are the things that we can try to do to create some cost savings while still really getting the job done and working with a different, difficult situation. But I know, we're getting a little tight on time already, but there's some great projects going on in Pike County. Give us a quick recap of some of the biggest ones.
Well, the biggest project we have right now is certainly the reconstruction of Interstate 84. And that actually started yesterday. And James D. Morrissey out of Philadelphia, which owns Eureka Stone Quarry in this area, they got the contract. It was a $66 million contract to rebuild and reconstruct Interstate 84. They're out there right now. They started yesterday. They actually have some of the road already paved. They're going to put a layer over the top, what they call a skim coat over the top, a leveling course, and get that road sealed up for the winter time. Again, the road has deteriorated to a point whereas if you don't seal it, it will deteriorate even faster. So if you put a leveling course over the top and make it an impervious surface, you'll save what's underneath it temporarily until that can get worn off. Yeah. So they are out there paving that right now. They'll have that done, they told me, in 2 weeks. That'll be finished. So we're very happy about that. I understand the bridge from New York to Pennsylvania, which is on Interstate 84, is also slated for reconstruction. I think that's going to be about another $40 million project. Interstate 84 is going to have 4 or 5 different phases. They're going to do the entire interstate. There was a problem with putting blacktop over concrete, like that alkali silica reaction that they refer to. So they know it needs to be done, but again, that's a change in technology, and that's a chemical reaction which I don't have to talk to you about because I'm sure you know more about chemistry than I do. But the thing is, the chemicals in there reacted to one another, and the concrete is starting to deteriorate, and it's extremely difficult to keep a surface on the top. Route 6 and 209 from Price Chopper out to the Delaware Valley School is another reconstruction project. They're waiting for funding on that. These are all federally funded projects, and I believe the first phase of Interstate 84 has that funding. Another big project in Pike County has always been the 01 project, and that starts in Lehman Township. And they did a phase of that years ago from Milford out to 739. That was the first phase. Then they went to the last phase, which started in Lehman, and they're actually working towards the middle. The first phase was complete. The fourth phase is complete. They're looking now, I believe, for funding for the third phase. I think that funding is in place. There was an issue with a water line that I think they've resolved or they're working through. So that project will be on the books and should get started very soon. Again, that was a road that years ago was not a problem, but the increased traffic on that road with the developments in Pike County back in the 80s the increase in traffic has just made that road.
Being that it's so narrow and it's
Yeah,
very
it needs to be
winding.
widened
Yeah.
out, and
Yeah.
you have to make those type of improvements, and they're the expensive improvements.
Right. And I think you can see from the dollar amounts, the 40 million for the bridge on 84, the 66 million, you can see how fast the dollars are eaten up, and then continuing with your maintenance on a daily level and trying to make sure that you're keeping the roads safe. So we're going to try to continuously put out recaps for PennDOT for Pike and PennDOT for Monroe, the recaps of what's being done,
Sure.
expected times. You know, we get thrown a lot with weather and we get thrown
yeah.
with things, but we're going to try to keep really strong communication with the constituents with
Sure.
that. And I thank you very much for always working with the office and the constituents.
It's my pleasure.
And we're out of time. We have to take a quick break. But if you do have any questions regarding any projects in Pike County with PennDOT, please feel free to contact my office, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that the main entrance to the Pennsylvania State Capitol building is home of 2 bronze doors that each weigh over 1 ton? As the primary entrance to this beautiful architectural building, the bronze doors signify the many accomplishments and sacrifices endured throughout the history of the Commonwealth. The magnificent archway overtop the doors contains a portrait of William Penn, founder of the Keystone State. The upper panels on the doors commemorate the forming of our nation, with the signing of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. The bottom panels depict the laborious industries of the Commonwealth, including coal mining and agriculture. Now you know.
Welcome back to the Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Rosemary Brown. We just finished up our conversation with PennDOT of Pike County, and now I'm joined by Ron Young, who is a Public Relations Director for District 5, Monroe County. Thank you for coming, Ron. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rosemary. It's always great to be back up here in Monroe County and get to see the Poconos in the fall. It's very beautiful.
It is nice. And we have so much to talk about because we have a lot of great projects happening in Monroe County. And as we discussed with Pike County, I think there's a lot of times that the constituents and the viewers, they know some of the projects that are going on. They know some of the hurdles that we're up against. But I like to give them as much information as possible to at least give them something. And if they have any more questions, of course, they can feel free to call the office and we'll help them out and get them those details. But so we're going to focus a little on Monroe County, even though I know you represent several areas in District 5. And what currently, I mean, I know many of the projects, but our viewers, can you give us a quick recap of Monroe County, the best you can, specifically in the 189th District, down my end here a little bit, that are going on and that are really almost completed or almost being ready to start?
Well, one that everyone's sure heard of is the Marshalls Creek bypass,
right.
now the Joseph Battisto bypass.
That's right.
Which is getting wrapped up. The bypass itself is basically done. They're doing work in the village right now, Marshalls Creek. They're doing rehab of the bridge over Marshalls Creek in town, finishing up the intersection work. The goal there is to get most of that work all done before winter arrives. They're going to have to try to squeeze in some paving work. If anyone's driven through there, they know for years it's been a rough patch right there at 402.
It has been. That has really
Business
been
29.
a tough
And that's
spot.
all going to get, when it's all said and done, it'll all be part of that project.
And I think a lot of that, too, I'm going to cut you off for a minute,
Sure.
a lot of that from my dealings with you and PennDOT and the constituents, you know, was, well, why isn't it getting fixed? And it was, like you said, patched, but with the plans and saying, we don't want to do any full force project because we know what we're going to do for the final end of it. So trying to just hold on until you knew the completion would be done the right way.
Correct. It was not. We didn't want to pave it with a full pave and do patching and paving while they're still going to be coming in with construction equipment and also digging things up around the bridge, doing drainage improvements and things like that. Would have been probably not the most prudent use of taxpayer dollars. Now the people driving over that every day and hitting the rough potholes and things
I
that
was
have been
one of
there.
them,
Yeah,
yes.
I don't like to hear that.
But you, yeah.
that was the plan. Was to wait till. Unfortunately, that was at the tail end of the project. Was to do that work in town, so we could get the new roadway open, so people would have a way around town so they wouldn't be jammed up in town while we were doing that work.
And I think when that is completed, and it actually by the time we show the show, it might be completed, but it really will be such an improvement to that whole area, and everything will we'll be able to finally stamp of approval that that project is closed.
Yes, and we hope everyone enjoys it. We do hear some people still have concerns about the roundabout. For the most part, it seems to be working well, that people have gotten adjusted to it. That's kind of the wave of the future at not just PennDOT, but nationwide with the Federal Highway Administration. They're looking at what's better. Can you put a roundabout in an intersection, or a signalized intersection, or widening? And for the
And they
most
are
part,
going more that route for the roundabouts.
you have to, they require, if there's federal dollars involved, to look at a roundabout, and
Is
believe
there
it or not,
is-
roundabouts are much more efficient and
I was just going to
safer.
say, is there a reason for that? So
Yeah.
it is still on a safety issue. They still say it's
and
safer than
in
a
the
single.
long term, it's your roundabouts don't use any electrical energy because there's no signal to
Right.
illuminate or work or maintain and replace bulbs, etc. over the years. In Pennsylvania, every signal gets turned over to the municipality that's in, and they're responsible for owning and maintaining it. So a roundabout will ultimately save money for the municipality involved as well, and also saves time and energy, and makes it a much safer intersection. Roundabouts typically have about a 70% reduction in crashes than a signalized straight intersection, because people have to slow down, they have to lead each other in, and they go around at a slower speed. And also keeps traffic moving, which is also better for air quality. You don't have traffic sitting in a queue at a signal waiting for the signal to turn during peak times, and you have all those vehicles sitting there spewing the emissions into the air, because emissions are the worst when a vehicle's sitting at an idle.
It's pretty interesting, to hear those types of things, and I don't think all of us always think of that when we look at this bypass and the roundabout. And it is a change. It's almost like training drivers to do something that they're not really used to. And I know even myself driving it, you have to get used to it, and but you can hear some of the benefits from the safety end of it and the emissions. That's pretty interesting. And you did mention something that I thought was interesting to remind the viewers of also, is that when you do have lights, that they are turned over to the municipalities. And just give us a real quick, because I think that's an education point that's not always known, that if there's a problem with the timing of a light. And I think that's important, because people will say, Rosemary, the traffic's backing up, the light is off, the signal is off, and why is it the municipalities function? And I think that's important to know.
Basically the state policy, state law. It's there were only, before that was put into effect, there were maybe, I think, 10 to 12 signals in the whole state that are owned by the state, and they were owned from probably when signals were invented, almost is when they were owned by the state. It's been that way. It would take a major action by the state to change that, but because it is that way, if someone does have an issue with a signal where they feel that the timing is off or something's malfunctioning, they need to start at the municipal level and go to their if they have a traffic engineer at the township or borough or city, go to them. Most of the time, if it's a township or borough, they'll have an engineering firm hired that does that for them, and they do still need a permit from the state, from PennDOT, to operate the signal, and they modify the signal at all, they need to get that permit modified, but it's a pretty simple process to do that.
But it makes sense, because
Yeah.
it's localized, and so you would say, just like everything with Pennsylvania, we would try to let the local control understand their traffic patterns the best, and then present that to the state to
Yeah,
say, hey, listen,
and
we're just verifying if this is okay with you.
Works for the
But-
most part. Sometimes you have some glitches. If you
Right.
have a tight car, like 611 in Bartonsville, for instance, there's several signals right in a row
Right.
that are in 3 different municipalities. Or then sometimes you run into some issues trying to get everybody on the
Agreement
same
on
page.
the same.
But
right.
that's still working out fairly well. Also, if someone would like a signal put into an intersection that does not currently have one, they need to start with the municipality as well. And there's a couple of different ways you can get that signal
Right.
put in. One is through the municipality
studies
and doing it. They could ask us to do a study at PennDOT. We would do the study for them. We do require in advance a letter in writing from the township stating that the township or borough or city is willing to pay for and install the signal if it meets the signal warrants, meaning the signal is warranted to go in. A lot of times municipalities don't like to do that because they're afraid that if it does say, yeah, it's warranted, then they're going to be on the hook for probably a minimum of $100,000, if not several $100,000, to get a signal put in there for legal reasons.
Right,
Because the legal
would show that it
someone
would
gets
have
in
to
a crash there, a lawyer could come along and say, well, the signal was warranted, you never put it in.
Yeah.
Other ways through a major project that the state and federal government would fund to maybe widen out an intersection like we did at 447 and 209 and replace those signals, or the new signal on the Batista bypass. Those were all put in using PennDOT money, but they still, at the end of the job, get turned over to the municipality that they're in.
Right. And, we're so tight on time here. I'm trying to get all the things in that I think people might want to know. We have really the Marshall's Creek exit off of that we have finished up that project, coming with an extra turning lane going up 447. That project was a very big project as well because of the bridge. And that really turned out very nicely. Do we have anything like that coming in? We're finishing up in Delaware Water Gap as well, finishing up in the Marshalls Creek area. We've done several in Stroudsburg. Is there anything else coming up on the plate with a larger bridge project?
Well, we do have the 191 bridge going on right now, which we're hearing a lot of complaints about, but we understand that that bridge, when that's done, they're going to try to get that done by the end of the year, but it might not be till January.
It's a long detour. That's why that's a pretty long detour.
And we understand that. And then when they're done with that one, they're going to shift over to the 447 bridge,
Right.
just, real close to that one in Barrett Township, and that's going to be probably through the spring, late spring, to get that one done.
So you're basically just switching directions
swapping
on
off
the detours.
detour. Yeah, and it is an inconvenience, but as you know, bridges in Pennsylvania are in bad shape, and these were two that really needed work done. They're structurally deficient. Getting them done, getting them off the list, they'll hopefully last another 70 to 100 years before they need to be replaced. But we have we're at a major crossroads in Pennsylvania when it comes to bridges and roads. We have poor IRI, which is the roughness index of the roads, and we have a lot of structurally deficient bridges. A quarter of our bridges are structurally deficient, and Secretary Shoke has recently taken the action to put stricter bridge weight postings on a lot of the bridges in the state to take a strain off the bridges to make them last a little longer, because we don't have the money to
improve
rehab them
them.
or replace them.
Yeah, to improve them. And I know a lot of the roads, we talk about the maintenance and the widening. We're talking about complete rebuilding and drainage. And so it's not just a paving, it's a whole restructuring of the
some
roads.
roads you get away with some million pavement, but a lot of it is the core of the road, the base down to the dirt back up. They need to be reconstructed. A lot of the drainage systems are way out of their lifespan, just like the bridges. So you need to replace the pipes underneath the road, the inlets, etc.
Right. And we have a wish list, I think, on some of these rebuilding and the pavings of these roads. And 209 going up north from the Batista bypass, going up towards Pike County. Some things out in the West End area.
That section is on what we call our decade of investment list.
Right.
If money were to come through Governor Corbett's proposed transportation funding plan, that would get basically almost all of 209 in Monroe County would get paved.
Yeah.
That hasn't been done as part of the Batista bypass project. There's sections that business 209 have been for that, but almost every major road in the county would probably be addressed through the decade of investment if that or some other plan gets passed by the legislature to fund
To focus on where we're deficient.
projects.
So,
Yeah, and would also include a lot of these betterment jobs we call, where we were talking about redoing the drainage and guide rail and signs and things that really need to be upgraded for safety reasons.
Well, I think that, unfortunately we're out of some time, but it's obvious that there are definite needs for road improvements and for bridge structural improvements. And hopefully we can all come together and make this work and see some of the progress that we need going forward. So Ron, I thank you very much. I thank you for your hard work.
Sure.
And we are going to do our best to make sure that we keep the viewers up to date with the most recent information for PennDOT, for Pike County and for Monroe County, and try to improve that communication. I think it's very important, and that's half the battle, people knowing what's coming and what's on the plate, even for driving. So I thank you very much, and I thank you for watching the Legislative Report. If you have any questions about this program or any road projects, please feel free to contact my office. The information will be on the screen. Thank you.